Well, 10 million South Africans are sinking deeper and deeper into debt as the impact of COVID-19 continues. The Debt Counselling Association says these figures are indicative of the people who have missed 3 or more monthly repayments due to a loss of jobs or cuts in working hours. Many of them are now borrowing money for daily necessities such as food and transport. To talk a little bit more about financial literacy at this time, we're joined by Tlalane Ntuli, who is the co-founder and chief operating officer at Yalu Financial Services. Great to have you, Tlalane. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks, Leanne. Thank you for having me on your show.
It's an absolute pleasure. I mean, we've seen reports of retrenchments at this time and statistics of people who are really they're struggling right now to repay their debts. But if you were to translate those numbers into real people, how bad has COVID-19 been on people's finances?
Yeah, so the situation is pretty bad. I think it's probably not wise to downplay the situation. We have seen, as Yalu, for example, an increase in the number of retrenchment claims that have been coming through or loss of income claims that have been coming through. We've seen a double-digit increase where we were having, for example, 2 claims a month. We're now having 5 claims a month. So the situation is bad. I think South African consumers are having a really tough time, and it's predominantly due to either people being fully retrenched because organizations just can't afford to keep people on, or people having their salaries reduced for whatever reason, just so organizations can keep moving forward. And of course, the first thing that often suffers either one's insurance premiums or one's ability to pay debt. So we are seeing more and more that people are just struggling to keep up with their obligations.
Yeah. You know, obviously there are arrangements that can be made with creditors. So what kind of advice are you giving people at a time like this where really you cannot find the money, you're getting more and more in debt, and yet there's just doesn't seem to be a light at the end of this tunnel? What can you do?
I think the first and most important thing with debt is concerned is for people to understand what type of debt they have and what kind of insurances they've got around that debt. So, for example, there are types of loans where one has credit life and where credit life insurance is managed on that particular policy. So let's take personal loans, for example. In most cases, personal loans do have what we call mandatory credit life insurance. And what the credit life insurance enables you to do is to actually claim from a policy that would then be either, if you're retrenched, it would pay back your loan for a maximum period often of about 12 months, depending on the provider and the terms and conditions. Or if in some cases, if there is a certain loss of income, and it's not all credit life insurance policies that allow for this, you are able to claim for that period for the credit life insurance to pay your loan. And the thing about credit life insurance, Leanne, is that most consumers don't actually know that they have it. And the reason why is because when one pays their debt installments, the premium for the credit life insurance policy is actually kind of in that already. So it's kind of put, or it becomes one payment. So your installment includes your premium. And so you don't see it as 2 separate products. And what's important for people to do is to actually go back to their loan agreement and look at all the documents that they were given in the time that they took out the debt, read through them and look at the portion around credit life insurance specifically.
Yeah, and that's a good piece of advice. But one of the things that people are doing, unfortunately, is you kind of going, I suppose what we can say is classify it as being in bad debt and borrowing money to pay off the bad debt. And, you know, this is a very vicious circle that one can get into.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a very difficult vicious circle once one has gotten into it. That's why I think the National Credit Regulator has made provision for debt counselors, whose role it is to sit with consumers and enable them to find a solution around how they get out of their debt. So if you find in yourself just unable to cope with the amount of credit payments that you have to sort of pay back every month, the best thing is to sit with a debt counselor and try and find a solution around it and say, what of those loans that I've got can I use credit life insurance to pay for? Because as I've said, in some of the loans or debt products, it is mandatory. And in what of them can I kind of ask a debt counselor to negotiate better rates and better interest for me? So I think it's very important for people to understand the tools overall that they've got available at disposal when it comes to debt. It is absolutely not impossible to have a conversation with the bank, and especially now during the COVID period, where most of the banks have actually made provision for consumers to negotiate a certain period of time where they are able to skip certain premiums. So I think the first and most important thing is for consumers to understand the overall basket of tools that are available to them to find themselves in a better position in this very, very stressful period of time.
Yeah. And I mean, we know that a lot of the banks gave these banking holidays where for 3 months they had said there'd be a pause on repayments. But that was a pause. We're not letting anybody off the hook now. But during that pause, a lot of people lost their jobs. And, we're talking about houses, we're talking about cars, we're talking about, everything that people have got loans out for that they are not now able to actually repay. What's going to happen? And also in terms of the assistance from banks, where does that come into play?
Geez, I wish I had a silver ball to say what's going to happen, but unfortunately I don't. I think by virtue of the 3 months that the banks have given to consumers, you can certainly say that you see an industry that is interested in somehow coming to the party and assisting its customers or South African consumers in general. I think that we've also seen from government interventions the interest to actually just try and find solutions around the issue, and not just in South Africa, but around the world. Consumers have the option, as I've said, to look at what policies they've got that relate to that debt. So, for example, for a consumer that has lost their job, where they can claim on retrenchment, they have up to 12 months in which they can claim for retrenchment, where they wouldn't have to worry about that particular credit insurance or that particular debt, rather. And what's important around that is actually the fact that a lot of consumers are already paying for credit life insurance. Many of them don't know, but they are already. So, for example, homes under $1 million, for some providers in the market, actually have credit life insurance as mandatory as well. So, as I've said, I think what's important is for consumers to understand the tools that are available to them and how they can leverage those tools. I don't see, a situation where people's debt is necessarily going to be written off, but I do see an industry that's interested in engaging consumers. How do we assist getting through the period?
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, the advice I think that you've been giving us is good, and to try and help people through this very, very difficult time. And it doesn't appear to be ending anytime soon. We're in this for the long haul, unfortunately. Tlalane Ntuli. Sorry, please continue.
No, I was just saying, I think that's the most frustrating part for all consumers is, where you don't necessarily see an end to your circumstances, and sort of the frustration of how far can the little savings that I've got, particularly for those customers that have lost their jobs, or consumers that have lost their jobs, how far is it going to take? Absolutely critical, and then saying, what can I do away with not paying right now if the situation comes to that point, and what can I not absolutely not pay for? So there is that option as well. It's a very difficult time.
Tlalane, thanks very, very much for talking to us and assisting people during this difficult financial time of COVID-19. That's the COO of Yalu Financial Services.